Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inside the Pickle Jar. And I'm going to start today with a little bit of a confession. So late at night, when the day's over and I'm trying to unwind, and my brain finally gets quiet or is trying to get quiet, I put on crinkle paper videos. This isn't a music, and it's not a show, it's not a podcast, it's just crinkle paper. It's just YouTube videos with someone slowly, deliberately crinkling, folding, smoothing paper. It could be tissue paper, cellophane, wax paper, and I'm immediately completely calm. My brain, which typically runs at approximately 11,000 tabs all day, just closes most of them. And for a long time, I thought this was a little weird, maybe a little embarrassing, the kind of thing you don't bring up in professional settings or really anywhere outside of very specific corners of the internet. And then I learned what was actually happening in my brain when I watched or listened to those videos. And it changed everything about how I understood my nervous system. I'm talking about ASMR, what it is, what it does, why neurodivergent brains are disproportionately drawn to it, and why the thing you might have been doing quietly and maybe a little guiltily at night is actually one of the most sophisticated nervous system regulation tools available to you. This is no shame, just science and some crinkle pepper. So I'm Tanya, and this is Inside the Pickle Jar. Let's go. So we're going to talk about the basics. For those of you that are on a video, this is one of my favorite crinkle paper sounds. It's just a catalog paper. Magazines have a great crinkle sound. I do know that some people like bubble wrap. And then there's the sound of nails, whether it's running against something. And some people like whisper talk, like people who talk like there are quite a few voices out there that sort of trigger that same feeling. If you know the painter Bob Ross, you kind of have an idea of what that feeling or what that sound sounds like. Someone whose voice is very much like Bob Ross. So let's start with the basics. ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. It's a very clinical name, but it stands for something very personal. So ASMR is the term for a tingling, calm sensation that some people experience in response to specific auditory or visual triggers. It usually starts at the scalp, that soft prickly feeling, and moves down the back of the neck and spine. It's sometimes called brain tingles. It's deeply relaxing. It can feel almost meditative. And I was attending my stepson's graduation, and this lovely family sat next to me at the graduation, and they had flowers for their graduate when after the ceremony was over. And it was wrapped in the same kind of crinkle paper, and every time she'd move it, it would make that noise, and I would get the brain tingles, and I get so sleepy. It was all I could do to stay awake during the ceremony because the crinkle paper noise sitting next to me was incredibly relaxing. But this meditative brain tingle feeling, well, the triggers, they kind of vary, from person to person. But the most common ones are like I told you, the soft whispering voices, tapping or scratching sounds, crinkling paper or packaging, the sound of pages turning, the sound of pages being written on, or typing, hairbrush playing with a hairbrush, certain role play scenarios like someone pretending to give you a haircut or a doctor's exam, a packing box like that. I want to listen to your heart and take a deep breath. That very soft, methodical. There are a couple of people. I now have stickers. Once you hear this, I'll have stickers in my shopping page that you can go buy stickers, cartoon characters of my each of my characters that I have on the show that I do. And so I will watch some of these stickers, and they are packing a box, or they are putting stickers together and talking, giving a very tingly, brain tingle feeling throughout the whole episode. So I know that not everyone experiences the tingles. Research says that like 20 to 30% of people report having that physical sensation, but there's a much bigger group that reports experiencing the relaxation and the calm, the focus, even when the tingles are not present specifically. For myself, I know, like, it not only is it calming, but it puts me to sleep. But then I have two sons, both are on the spectrum, and one son loves ASMR and the other, it annoys them to pieces, and so they don't ever listen to it. And I don't know if he has just never found what works for him, but he says he doesn't really enjoy it. I do have synesthesia as well, so I think that kind of heightens my brain tingle sensation. I have numbers or colors, and so I tend to remember colors and numbers better, but I don't necessarily remember people's names unless it sparks a color memory for me. So anyway, ASMR as a name phenomenon is pretty new. The term was coined around 2010 by a woman named Jennifer Allen. And she wanted a more clinical sounding label for something people had been experiencing and trying to describe online for years. But the experience itself is really ancient. People have always been soothed by soft sounds, repetitive gentle stimulation, the presence of someone attending to them carefully and quietly. If you like back scratches, or when someone will rub on your arm very lightly, and if that gives you goosebumps, kind of that same tingle, it's that kind of a sensation. So what's new now is that we have a name for it. Just it's only like 16 years old, the name. And we have a lot of science starting to explain it. So when you name something, it makes it easier to study it and easier to understand. So what's actually happening in the brain during an ASMR response? Well, this is the part where it gets really fascinating, because research shows that fMRI, brain imaging, shows that during ASMR, the brain's default mode network, the system that's actually active during rest and daydreaming and self reflection, becomes highly activated. And at the same time, it connects unusually strong with the visual and auditory cortex. So, what does this mean in plain English? Well, ASMR puts your brain into a state that looks a lot like deep rest or meditation, while keeping just enough sensory engagement active to hold your attention. It's the neurological sweet spot between stimulation and calm. So, for a brain that swings between overwhelm and understimulation, which describes a lot of neurodivergent brains, that sweet spot is genuinely hard to find. And ASMR finds it reliably. Studies show also that ASMR triggers the release of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward, as well as oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, which is also associated with feelings of safety and trust and social connection. And so, this is why ASMR often feels intimate even when you're watching a stranger on a screen. Your brain is receiving social bonding signals. So someone is attending to you gently and carefully, and your nervous system responds to that as though it's real. That's really cool. It's sort of this thing you can do for yourself. So for people who find social interaction draining, which is common in the neurodivergent community, ASMR offers something that feels like connection without the cost and the social reward without the social tax. So here's another cool thing. ASMR consistently activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your atomic nervous system that's responsible for rest and digest, as opposed to fight, flight, or freeze. Heart rate slows. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, decreases. Breathing deepens. Muscle tension releases. That's measurable. This is physiological. It's not a placebo. Your body is actually chemically, neurologically calming down. And if I listen to a video, I can't make it. I mean, there's hours of it out there. I have very specific artists, if you might want to call them artists, ASMR artists. I'll put some links in below, but one of them is Poison Bloom. I think she does a fantastic job at all of the crinkle paper stuff, but she has a wide range of other sounds. So here's the part that I think is really interesting for the neurodivergent community specifically. Interoception is the sense that tells you what's happening in your body, hunger, heartbeat, temperature, emotion as physical sensation. And a lot of neurodivergent people have atypical interoception, and they may not notice they're hungry until they're ravenous, which happens to me a lot. When I'm down in focus mode and in flow, I will forget to eat and I forget to get up, and hours go by. And they, a lot of times, don't notice that they're dysregulated until they're in a full meltdown, and it's really hard to identify what they're feeling in their body at any given moment. So ASMR creates a very clear, very specific, pleasant physical sensation, the tingles, the warmth, the relaxation response. And for a brain that struggles to read its own internal signals, that clarity is like a recalibration. And it gives your nervous system a clean, unambiguous sensory experience to orient around. It's regulatory, not just despite the stimulation, it's regulatory because of it. So let's talk about why neurodivergent people seem to be disproportionately represented in the ASMR community. So, anecdotally, if you spend any time in ADHD or autism communities online, you will find ASMR everywhere. People talk about it constantly. Their favorite creators, their favorite triggers, the way it helps them sleep or focus, or come down after a hard day. And the research is still catching up, but there are several neurological reasons this connection makes complete sense. So many neurodivergent brains are sensory seekers. They need more sensory input than a neurotypical nervous system to feel regulated and alert. And ASMR provides consistent, gentle, repeatable sensory stimulation. It's not overwhelming and it's not unpredictable. It delivers exactly what it promises at exactly the volume that you can control. But I know that predictability is part of the appeal. You know exactly what you're going to get, and there are no social surprises. There's no performance required. You're just receiving. And ADHD brains in particular have differences in how dopamine is regulated and received. The brain is often seeking dopamine, novelty, stimulation, reward, and struggling to find it in everyday low stimulation tasks. So ASMR delivers a steady, gentle dopamine drip. Not the spike and crash of a screen or a slow media scroll. It's a slow, sustained release that keeps the brain just engaged enough to stay present without flooding it. So this is why so many people with ADHD report being able to focus on tasks like reading, studying, and working with ASMR in the background. It's in a way that they can't do it with music or silence. And the ASMR is occupying just enough of the brain's sensory seeking capacity to let the rest of it do the actual work. So this is really personal for me. This is really about masking tax recovery. After a day of masking, especially if I have to be with a lot of people, I had to go into the office, have big meetings where I'm having to translate myself, monitor my presentation, perform neurotypically for hours. My nervous system gets really depleted in a very specific way. It's been on high alert. Did I behave enough? Did I do the right things? Did I say the wrong things? There's always this like, okay, I remember saying this. Could it have been taken wrong? How can I do it better? And I've been on high alert for the whole time. And I'm processing social information at, full capacity and suppressing all my natural responses constantly. So then when I finally get home, my brain doesn't just need rest, it needs low demand sensory input that doesn't require anything from me. No social pressuring, no performance, no translation. And it's quite a better alternative than going and pouring a glass of wine right away. Because I can't always function in the early evening if I've started drinking wine too early. And so ASMR is a good way to calm down. And the crinkle paper doesn't need anything from me. I just get to receive it. And ASMR, it's perfectly structured for that recovery that I need. It gives my sense of something to land on without requiring my executive function to kind of manage it. It's input without demand. Um, the other side of this, of ASMR, is called misophonia. Um, because this also equally real and equally neurodivergent. Misophonia is that intense, often rage-inducing negative reaction to specific sounds. I do have this problem with mouth noises, whether it's crunching ice really loud, popping gum. Um, I have a couple of friends who will chew their gum, and with every chew, they're popping millions of bubbles in their mouth with their gum, and it's like hearing someone chewing on bubble wrap. It's just this constant noise, and it can be anything: the chewing, breathing, tapping, certain repetitive noises. It's also common in the neurodivergent community, and it's essentially the opposite of ASMR. The same auditory sensitivity that makes some sounds deeply pleasurable makes others completely intolerable, which helps explain what I have going on for myself. Maybe it also helps you, because if you're listening to this and you're thinking, ASMR sounds like my personal nightmare, not my salvation, that's completely valid neurodivergent nervous system response. It doesn't mean you're doing ASMR wrong or doing any of it wrong. You're just wired differently from the ASMR responders. And that difference tells you something important about your sensory profile. Or you could be like me, where you've got these amazing sounds that make you feel great. And then there are some that just drive you absolutely bonkers. So I want to explain a few minutes on something I think is important, because a lot of people who use ASMR do it very quietly, very privately, with headphones in late at night, in a way they wouldn't necessarily bring it up at the dinner table. It almost sounds like I'm trying to describe porn or something else like that. And I understand that, because ASMR can look strange from the outside. A grown adult watching someone crinkle a piece of tissue paper for 20 minutes, or whispering into a camera about nothing in particular, or pretending to give an invisible viewer a cranial nerve exam. It doesn't look productive. It doesn't look sophisticated. It looks like something you should probably outgrow. But here's what I want to say about that. The shame around ASMR is the same shame that gets applied to a lot of things neurodivergent people find genuinely helpful. Stimming, special interests, comfort objects, repetitive behaviors, things that look childish or strange from the outside, but are doing real important regulatory work on the inside. And we live in a culture that pathologizes self-soothing unless it comes from a socially approved form. A glass of wine after work, that's normal. A weighted blanket and a crinkle paper video, that's weird. But one of those is actually good for your nervous system, and the other is ethanol. And as someone who is still struggling with consuming too much wine, and I'm working on it, I just want to say I definitely think ASMR is my gateway or my off ramp from consuming too much wine. So I want to formally, on my behalf, give you permission, if you need it, to use ASMR without apology. So put your crinkle paper video on at 10 p.m. and let your brain do what it needs to do, to call it what it actually is: regulation, rest, recovery. Not weakness, not weirdness. Your nervous system doing exactly what it needs to do. Okay, so I've given you permission, and then you may be saying, well, yeah, I do watch crinkle paper videos, but I would love more information. Well, let's talk about how to actually use ASMR as an intentional regulation tool, not just something you stumble into at midnight or 2 a.m. because our executive function did not function that day. First of all, figure out your triggers. Not every ASMR trigger works for every person. Some people respond to soft voices, others to tapping, others to visual triggers, watching hands move slowly and deliberately. That one sometimes affects me as well. Others to crinkle sounds, which is obviously my personal sweet spot. If you've never intentionally explored ASMR, actually, you should give yourself a few sessions to find your triggers. So search for ASMR, and then you can add a descriptor like ASMR paper sounds. I type in ASMR crinkle paper. You can also do like ASMR soft spoken, ASMR tapping, and pay attention to what your body does. Like give it like 2 to 5 minutes of listening. Maybe you watch, maybe you don't. But where do you feel the response? And does it relax or irritate you? And does it hold your attention or lose it? And so for me, like the brain tingles are not just in my scalp, but they're also along the tops of my shoulders and down my neck. But your triggers are your own. There's no wrong answer. And then number two, match the content to the need. So different ASMR content does different things. Like for sleep, you might want like a dark screen and no video, soft voices or very quiet repetitive sounds, nothing that requires visual attention. I just turn my phone face down on my pillow next to my ears because I don't want it to be too loud for my husband. But you can also do earbuds and put your phone face down. Then if you want like focus, maybe what works for you is consistent background sounds like tapping, typing, ambient noise, ASMR, something that's steady that occupies the sensory seeking part of your brain without pulling your attention away from the task. And then maybe like for decompression after masking all day, just whatever your strongest trigger is. This is the recovery session, so give your nervous system what it finds most reliably calming. And then for tingles specifically, binaural audio with headphones. That's easiest. Ear to ear sounds, close microphone work, layered textures. This is where the physical sensation is most reliably produced. So three, actually use this productively, use it proactively, not just reactively. Most people discover ASMR when they're already dysregulated, actually, or they're desperate for sleep and it works then, but it works even better as a proactive tool, which is why I am personally going to start using. And so what would it look like if you built in a 10-minute ASMR session into your wind down routine before it's urgent? Or maybe like if you had a 10-minute meditation session when you got home, but instead of doing a guided meditation, you set your timer and you do a 10-minute meditation to whatever is your strongest trigger, which for me would be the crinkle papers. You can use it as a transition tool, like between work and home, between a hard social situation in your evening. If you treat it as maintenance, maybe instead of just emergency repair. The nervous system does respond better to consistent, gentle regulation than it does to crisis intervention. So if you can give your brain what it needs before it's screaming for it, the whole day it runs completely differently. And then number 4, don't let perfect be the enemy of helpful. You don't need a perfect ASMR setup. You don't need expensive headphones or a specific creator or a dark room. You need the thing that works for your brain whenever you can access it. Sometimes because I listened to enough crinkle paper, and here I am, I'm showing my own shame in this moment, but because I listened to enough of it, if I start thinking about it, I can conjure that in my brain without actually having to watch the video if I'm in an immediate need for self-soothing. And then it kind of helps me calm down. But you just need it whatever works for your brain. And 5 minutes of crinkle paper between meetings count. 10 minutes of soft typing sounds while you're trying to start a new task, that counts. And like maybe 2 minutes of slow unboxing video while you're transitioning out of a hard conversation counts. Yeah, I really love some of those uh, uh, unboxing with the sticker folks when they are packaging, when they're packaging up their snail mail clubs, which I will have one on my shop coming up in June here real soon. But they have the cellophane bags and they're packing the stickers and the post-it notes and things. I love listening to all of that. So uh, find out what suits your needs and just small, consistent beats that will be elaborate and occasional every time. So I want to come back to where we started, the crinkle paper. This is the sound. I've been watching crinkle paper videos for years, long before I had a language for what they were doing. Long before I knew what ASMR was, or that there was a community of people doing exactly the same thing. I just knew that something about the sound, the specific texture of the sound, the unpredictability within a predictable framework, the way it filled the auditory space without demanding anything from me, made the inside of my head feel quieter. And what I know now is that my brain was seeking regulation in exactly the way it needed to. That the sensory seeking was not a flaw, but it was not actually weird, and that my nervous system was doing something intelligent. It was finding a consistent, low cost, low demand pathway back to calm. And that the shame I felt about it, well, that sense had grown, that a grown professional should not need a crinkle paper video to wind down. That's not really based on anything real. It was just one more version of the story that says neurodivergent brains should be able to regulate the way neurotypical brains regulate, with the same tools on the same timeline without any of the particular accommodations that actually work. And that story is just not true. And you don't have to keep living inside of it. Your nervous system knows what it needs. The crinkle paper, the soft voice, the tapping sound, whatever your version of it is, that's not a guilty pleasure. That's regulation. That's self-knowledge. That's you taking care of the brain you actually have. And that deserves exactly zero apology. So I just want to sort of wrap this up by saying your nervous system is not broken. It's calibrated to your sensory profile, to your history, to the particular way your brain processes the world, and what it needs to regulate may look different from what the person next to you needs. And that is not a deficit. That's just information. Now, ASMR is one tool. It's one pathway, one way of giving your nervous system what it's asking for. If it works for you, use it without apology, without embarrassment, without explaining yourself to anyone who doesn't understand. And if it doesn't work for you, That's equally valid. Your nervous system has its own language. The goal is just to learn it. In the meantime, I'll be over here with my crinkle paper. So be gentle with yourself, pickle friend. If you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed the video, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share. It really helps what I'm doing here to drive acceptance and normalization for the neurodivergent community. Come back next week and we'll talk some more about all things neurodivergent. And I'll see you next time inside the jar. Bye.